The next category of the drug are M18 and dihydroemetine. Now, if you look at the chemistry of the M18 and dihydroemetine, it is the plant alkaloid. It is a naturally derived drug from a plant termed as Ipecacuanha. Dihydroemetine is actually its synthetic derivative. So you can say that emetine is a naturally derived. Studying the structure of the emetine, a synthetically derived drug is a dihydroemetine. It shows a very irregular absorption, erratic absorption. It is preferably therefore has to be given by subcutaneous route, but it can also be given in the in emergency conditions by intramuscular route, but it is never given by the intravenous route, which you have to remember. It produces erratic oral absorption because it is highly bitter in the test. So it is very difficult for this drug to be taken orally, because the minute person will take this drug orally, the emesis will be induced. And along with the emesis, along with the whatever he is vomit, along with the vomit, the drug will be also vomited out. So patient will not get benefited. So that is why oral route is not preferred in case of a emetine. We have to go to the other route like subcutaneous route or to the intramuscular route, but intravenous route is never preferred. You can see that the drug undergoes a deposition into the body, and the plasma half-life of the drug is very long. It is around 5 days. So the Ipecacuanha cannot be given repeatedly. Otherwise, there will be a cumulative toxicity of the Ipecacuanha. So this is another important property of the Ipecacuanha. Now we are moving to the next, that is emetine. How does this distribution take place? It gets concentrated in liver, it gets concentrated in tissues like lungs, spleen, kidney, and cardiac muscle, and very importantly, when we are talking about amoebiasis, it gets deposited into intestinal wall. It gets metabolized and excreted slowly via kidney, and that may be the another reason why its T-half is very long, is around 5 days. And that is the reason, if you give the drug repeatedly, it can cause a cumulative toxicity. There can be a trace amount of the drug that can be detected in urine even after the period of 1 to 2 months after administration of last dose. So you can imagine its deposition into the body. It should not be used, therefore, for more than 10 days. Usually it is used continuously for 3 to 5 days. Emetine is majorly acting, this is structure of the emetine, you can see, and this is a plant from which it is derived. It is derived from the roots of this Ipecacuanha plant. It acts on the tissue tropozoites. You remember the amoebic cell cycle? It's a cyst which gets converted to the tropozoites, and tropozoites which, you know, infest themselves across the wall of the intestine. So it majorly acts on the tissue tropozoites. It causes the irreversible block of the synthesis of the protein. As there is a inhibition of the protein synthesis, it is usually causing the protein synthesis inhibition by preventing elongation of the protein, which is one of the processes involved in the protein formation across the ribosomal subunit. And because the proteins are not getting elongated, they do not get completely formed, and as they are not completely formed, they are not functional, and therefore the survival of the amoeba becomes difficult. Rather than amoeba, I will say the survival of tropozoites become very difficult. As I already told you, it is given by intramuscular injection, but the major concern with Ipecacuanha is that it cannot be given to the patient suffering from cardiac diseases, because the drug itself causes a cardiotoxicity. Not only that, but it also induces a weakness in the muscles. So you have to be very careful when you are giving these drugs to small children or to the geriatric patient. So you can see that emetine has lot of drawbacks. It has a very bitter taste, cannot be given by oral route, cannot be given by IV route. Not only that, but it has a serious side effect like cardiotoxicity, so hence get contraindicated in patients suffering from the heart diseases. It causes neuromuscular weakness, hence it cannot be given in the small pediatric patient or in the geriatric patient. Regarding adverse effects of the emetine, if you compare with it with the dihydroemetine, it is comparatively less toxic. It can cause a pain at the site of the injection when you are giving the drug by intramuscular route. It also, because it is bitter, it can cause nausea, vomiting, and sometimes diarrhea. Neuromuscular weakness, I have already told you. A serious toxicity associated with its cardiotoxicity, which usually manifests in terms of arrhythmia or a fall in the BP or a heart failure. So you can see that the toxicity of the potential of the M18 is much higher than that of a therapeutic potential. So obviously this will not be always a first choice of the drug to treat amoebiasis. It will remain as an optional choice, or when the serious condition is there, then only the M18 will be given to the patient. Otherwise we have a azole derivatives like metronidazole and some other derivatives. So where there can be a question on the toxicity of the M18. So you can write the toxicity depending upon at what site it is taking place. The first type of the reaction which can happen is at the site of injection. It is highly irritant. It induces the pain, stiffness, or sometimes eczematous lesions at a site of injection. Being a bitter, it induces nausea and vomiting. It causes stimulation of chemoreceptor trigger zone, and therefore it induces vomiting and causes the gastric irritation also. And because there is irritation, there are abdominal cramps. Because of irritation, GIT motility increases, so there is a diarrhea. And sometimes the patient may get confused also, that if there is a diarrhea, is it because of the M18 or is it because of the amoebiasis itself? And because of all these effects, there will be a weakness. Then it causes the stiffness of the muscles. Then it can cause fall in the BP because it is causing heart failure, arrhythmia. So BP will going to fall down, hypertension. There can be a reflex tachycardia. There will be a lot of ECG changes. There may be inflammation of the myocardium. But these are the things which are very serious. These are the symptoms which are very serious. And therefore, the patient who are already at a risk of the cardiac disease should not be given ipecacuanha. So if you are seeing such type of the side effects within the patient, then to avoid this, we have to recommend a strict bed rest to the patient or during the M18 therapy. And because there is a neuromuscular weakness, exercise should be prohibited for at least 1 to 2 months after consuming M18. Even the M18 is strictly contraindicated in those patients who are suffering from cardiac as well as renal diseases, because it is causing hypertension also. And it is completely contraindicated in pregnant ladies or during the pregnancy. So I hope the toxicity of M18 is. And now we are moving to the clinical uses. Because it has a very good penetration within the tissues, it can be used to treat amoebic liver abscess. It can also be used to treat intestinal wall infection with trophozoites of amoeba. In a severe form of amoebiasis, where there is acute amoebic dysentery, then rather than M18, dihydroemetine will be preferred because it causes comparatively less toxicity and can be given therefore continuously to 5 days. Contraindication we already studied, not used in patients suffering from heart disease, kidney disease, or in pregnant ladies. It cannot be used in children. Now we are moving to the next drug, and that is a chloroquine, which comes under the category of the, again, tissue amebicide. I repeat, metronidazole comes under the category of both the tissue as well as the luminal. So it's a mixed amebicide. Then we looked at the M18 and dihydroemetine, which come under the category of the tissue amebicide. And now we're looking to the next drug, which is a chloroquine, which is also a tissue amebicide. But rather than amebicide, it is majorly used as an anti-malarial drug. But don't forget that malaria and amoeba both are the protozoal infection. Chloroquine has a very good distribution within the liver. So if the amoebic infection reaches to the liver, chloroquine can also be used as an anti-amoebic drug. Obviously, it alone will not be able to take care of the amoebiasis, and hence it has to be used in combination with metronidazole, or you can combine chloroquine with any other luminal amoeba. Now, so we move on to the next category of the drug, and that is luminal amebicide. Luminal amebicides are the drugs which will act on the parasites which are present in the GIT lumen, and they will usually cause asymptomatic amoebiasis, which include diloxamide furoate, which includes iodoquinol, and antibiotics like paramomycin, and erythromycin. Now let's move on to the next drug, that is diloxamide furoate. It is nothing but it's a ester of diloxanide and a furoic acid. It is given orally. Being a ester, when it reaches to the intestine, it will split because across the wall of the intestine, there are enzymes which are esterase, which will break down this ester bond, and diloxanide and furoic acid will separate. The diloxanide will get absorbed and it will produce its action within the lumen, and then it will get absorbed. And after it reaches to the systemic circulation, it will get conjugated with a glucuronide, which is a water-soluble conjugate, and it will get excreted through the urine. So you can see there is no deposition of the drug. Around 90% of the drug is getting absorbed. The drug which is, sorry, not absorbed, gets excreted. The unabsorbed diloxanide which is there will continue to exert its amoebicidal effect, which is around 10%. So when you're giving 100 milligram of the drug, 90 milligram of the drug is going to get excreted, whereas 10 milligram of the drug is actually going to reside across the lumen and is going to produce luminocidal action. Now, when you talk about a pharmacodynamic, exact mechanism is not known. It can be a direct amoebicidal action across the luminal form. It is not producing any effect against the trophozoites which are already migrated into the intestinal wall or those outside the intestine, that is into the liver. It is a drug of choice for asymptomatic infection. It can be used to eradicate the infection if it given along with all forms of amoebiasis. So rather than using as a curative drug, you can use this drug as a prophylactic, because if there is any cyst or any dormant form of the amoeba left into the lumen, it can be used to remove that form. It is given as a 500 milligram 3 times a day for 10 days. It causes accumulation of the gas. So flatulence, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps, but which are very mild side effects. There are no much serious side effects like M18 associated with it. Again, the contraindication, it cannot be given in pregnant ladies and it cannot be given in children age less than 2 years. The next antibiotic, which is important, is a paramomycin sulfate. It is aminoglycoside antibiotic. As it doesn't get absorbed across the GIT, it resides across the lumen, and therefore it is effective against the luminal form of amoeba. It has a direct amoebicidal action because it causes breaks across the cell membrane of the parasite, which leads to the leakage of the vital components of the cell. And because the nutrients, vital components of the cell get leaked out of the cell, they will or amoeba will die. Indirect killing of the bacterial flora is essential for proliferation of pathogenic amoeba. Now this sentence is very important. What does it say is that the paramomycin has a direct effect across the amoeba. How does it do that? It causes the leakage of the cellular content because the paramomycin is able to produce the breaks across the membrane, cell membrane of the amoeba. So that's a direct action. What is its indirect action? It is an antibiotic. It has a suppressive effect over the bacterial flora. No doubt the essential bacterial flora across the GIT lumen will get suppressed. But how will it produce its effect is indirect effect. Because the bacterial flora is suppressed, the amoeba which is growing inside the lumen survives on the vitamins or the metabolites which are synthesized by this bacteria. So when this bacteria is suppressed, the amoeba will be deprived of the nutrients. And as it is deprived of the nutrient, its survival will become difficult. So you can see that paramomycin is acting by both the mechanism. The direct, by directly causing leakage of the cellular contents of amoeba, indirectly by suppressing the essential flora within the lumen and depriving the amoeba from the essential nutrients and making its survival difficult. This is the structure of the. Regarding the kinetic properties, it is given orally. It is not absorbed through the GIT, but whatever small amount gets absorbed gets excreted unchanged through the urine, and it is aminoglycoside. Aminoglycosides are known to cause renotoxicity, and this is not exception. It also causes nephrotoxicity. These are certain side effects and adverse effects. Gastrointestinal distress and diarrhea may be there. But I told you this is aminoglycoside. It is known to cause renal toxicity, renotoxicity or nephrotoxicity, and hence it cannot be administered if the patient has a history of any kidney diseases. Because it is causing distress of GIT and diarrhea, if the patient has even the history of GIT ulceration, it should be contraindicated. The next antibiotic is tetracycline. Tetracycline is a broad spectrum antibiotic. It has a weak anti-amoebicidal action. So it can be given in combination with certain anti-amoebicidal drug. Tetracycline causes suppression of the essential bacterial flora present in intestine. Therefore, the amoeba gets deprived from the nutrient supply. And that is how tetracycline produces indirect effect and threatens the survival of amoeba. It is used in severe cases of amoebic dysentery if the patient is not responding to the mixed amoebicidal drug like metronidazole combined with dihydroemetine. So you can see this is an alternative drug. This is not a first choice or a second choice drug. It is an alternative drug. If metronidazole or metronidazole in combination with dihydroemetine fails to work or fails to control amoebic dysentery, then only the last option which remains. Next drug is iodoquinol. This is halogenated hydroxyquinoline derivative. Again, mechanism is unknown. It is effective against the luminal forms of amoeba, not effective against the intestinal form of the amoeba. Because it doesn't get absorbed, it will act only across the lumen and will get excreted through fecal material. Only 10% of the drug enters into the circulation, gets conjugated with glucuronide and gets excreted through urine. The drug has a prolonged half-life, 11 to 14 hours. It is mainly used as luminal amoebicide. It is used again rather than curative for eradication of the amoebal infection along with the tissue amoebicides. Adverse effects include it causes peripheral neuropathy, that is the inflammation of a peripheral neurons causing optic neuritis. It causes nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, enlargement of the thyroid gland or granulocytosis. Because it contains iodo in its functional group, it may sometimes lead to the iodine sensitivity. Because it is causing the enlargement of the thyroid gland, it may interfere with the thyroid function test because it increases the protein-bound serum iodine and it may cause a decrease in the uptake of the radioactive iodine 130. It is not given in patients suffering from any neuronal inflammation of the eye or optic neuropathy. Again, we have already seen that it is causing thyroid enlargement, so it cannot be given in thyroid diseases. And patients who are already allergic to iodine cannot be administered with this drug. And those who are suffering from a severe kidney or a liver diseases also are not given this drug. So it's lot of contraindications are there for the iodoquinol. It is discontinued if it produces a persistent diarrhea or if it produces any toxicity related to iodine, which can be characterized as dermatitis, urticaria, or pruritus, or if there is a fever. All such symptoms if appear in the patient after consumption of iodoquinol, it has to be immediately stopped. That indicates that patient is allergic to iodine. So now we have seen that there are various types of the drugs which can be used. See, we have seen number of drugs, and in that there are various types of the infections which we have seen. The one is a asymptomatic cyst carrier infection. So what will be the drug of choice for it? Will be iodoquinol, paromomycin, or diloxanide furoate. Whereas when there is a diarrhea and dysentery and the infection has gone outside the intestine, means into the systemic circulation, that is it has reached to the liver or any other organ, then you can give a mixed amoebicidal drug like metronidazole, and you can combine that metronidazole treatment with iodoquinol or paromomycin or diloxamide, because metronidazole will take care of both luminal as well as systemic infection, whereas iodoquinol and paromomycin will prevent its relapse if there is any cyst form remaining residing across the intestinal wall, that will be killed by this drug, so relapse will be prevented. And if there is a purely amoebic liver abscess, then the drug of the choice will remain chloroquine in combination with metronidazole. Or in severe cases, if the patient is not responding to a chloroquine or metronidazole, then you can give, the last option will be a drug like M18 can be given to the patient. So you can, I was talking about a table which you have to make. So this is a table which I have taken from Tripathi, and you can see that how they have classified and how you can remember the drugs. Like the one which I talked right now, that if there is a asymptomatic intestinal infection, then you can give a luminal agent like diloxamide, iodoquinol or paramycin. If there is a mild to moderate, then obviously a choice of the drug will be metronidazole. Again, when severe, you can give metronidazole in combination with certain luminal agent, and even dihydroamidine can also be given. If it is restricted only to the hepatic abscess or it is extraintestinal, then you can give metronidazole in combination with chloroquine, and then for prophylactic treatment, you can give certain luminal agents. So you can see that the treatment of the amoebiasis cannot be done only by administering one drug. Very importantly, you have to first identify whether this amoebiasis is severe, moderate, mild, it is only restricted to the lumen of the GIT, or it has infested, the amoebic infection has already infested into systemic circulation or has reached to the other organs like liver. So diagnosis becomes very important in this situation. And once the complete diagnosis is done, that it is only restricted to luminal, you can restrict your treatment only to luminal amoebicides. But usually the mixed amoebicides are preferred because sometimes there are chances that infection may spread into the intestinal wall. So in amoebiasis, the drug of the first choice always remains is metronidazole. But metronidazole alone cannot be used because metronidazole gets absorbed through the GIT wall quickly. So it will not reside across the lumen and will not be available to kill cyst form. And therefore metronidazole treatment has to be followed with a luminal amoebicide like iodoquinol and so on. And if the infection has already reached to the liver and established, then the metronidazole has to be combined with chloroquine. So as a pharmacology student, you have to understand the type of infection the amoebiasis has occurred in the body, and accordingly there will be a selection of the drug because the questions may arise according to that. So these are my references which I have referred for my lecture. You can refer Tripathi and you can refer Satoskar and Bhandarkar, 2 books for your lecture, for your preparation of the anti-amoebiasis. So here today we stopped with our lecture. Thank you.